Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Helena Nat. I am the Executive Director with the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce, and it is Friday. It's a beautiful day in New York, and I hope you're enjoying this, great weather. But today is Webinar Friday, and we've been putting these on, for the last 2.5 years to provide information on how to grow your business, but not only how to grow your business, how to protect your business, and to be aware of other factors that affect your business. And today is one of them. Today we are very honored and privileged to have Shelley Sunstein and also Frank Stuck. And I would be remiss to say, Jennifer, thank you from iHeartRadio for helping me put this on and sponsoring this. So we're really excited about that. This is very important because it's talking about New York Alliance Against Insurance Fraud. And when we represent 30,000 different business and civic leaders, we hear things, we read things about the outside business, how it affects your business, and also from the bottom line, how important it is for you to know all the facts about things that are regulations outside your area of comfort of zone, or what affects your rates when you have insurance. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Shelley and Frank. Thank you so much for being here. By the way, it is being recorded. It will be on Chamber TV. Put your questions in the chat, and we will be. It's going to be a very informal chat right now for us to provide that information to you. So if you have any questions, we're going to do one-on-one. So I'm going to turn it over to Frank and Shelley. Thank you so much, Frank and Shelley, for being here.
Thanks, Helena. Thank you, Helena, and thank you to the New York City Chamber of Commerce. It's an honor to be talking to you today. Now, Frank Stuck knows everything about insurance fraud. I mean, he's the insurance fraud maven. And today we're going to focus on workers' comp fraud. But first, I want Frank to give an overview of insurance fraud in general and how that impacts your business financially and impacts every New Yorker financially.
Great. Thanks, Shelley. First off, I just want to thank the Chamber, the New York City Chamber of Commerce, for allowing Shelley and I to talk about this most important subject. The New York Alliance Against Insurance Fraud, as you'll hear later in the program, is committed on an annual basis to identifying and putting out programs so people understand the impact of insurance fraud. And I work for the Delta Group, and we are a company that supports the Alliance, supports the chambers, and I'm looking forward to sharing this information. So let's just start right at the beginning and talk about what insurance fraud is, Shelley. And the most simple definition of insurance fraud is the abuse of the insurance system for financial gain. So when you think about that, it's people who are doing what's called a material misrepresentation in order to get something that they're not entitled to, and it's all financial. The bottom line is people commit fraud to get lower rates on their policy. People commit fraud to get more money on a claim that on a legitimate claim than they should be receiving. People commit fraud by creating claims and staging accidents. And we see that in all forms of insurance, not only just workers' comp, workers' compensation, which is what we're, the main subject of today's program. But fraud is it's an insidious act. People have to understand, and we've spoken about this specifically at the Alliance, to get people to understand what the impact of fraud is. The bottom line is it's one of the only crimes in the country that impacts every insuring paying person. Okay, so think about that. All right, everybody who buys any form of insurance, whether it's health insurance, life insurance, property and casualty insurance, which is automobile, homeowners, workers' compensation coverage, everybody who buys insurance is impacted by fraud, because the cost of fraud obviously is borne by everybody who pays, every consumer who buys insurance.
Let's talk specifically about workers' comp fraud. First
Okay.
of all, what is workers' compensation?
Very simply, the workers' compensation system was created for the purpose of assisting those workers who were injured on the job, or in some states on their way to their job and home from their job. All right. It was created to put them back in a financial situation that allows them to get rehabilitated and not suffer that large economic loss of not working. So simply put, if a worker's injured, the system is designed to help them get them back on their feet. And it's not only about money, Shelley. It's also there are protocols within the work comp system that help people get back to health. So, in addition to, paying in the workers' wages, it also provides for rehabilitation and medical care to get that person back up and running to be, to be put back whole. So.
Okay, but what should employers look out for in terms of workers' comp fraud? How do businesses protect themselves to make sure that whoever is claiming they need workers' comp really needs it?
Okay, so one of the things that if you go in, years ago, I was with the Hanover Insurance Company, where in 1981, I started what's called the SIU, or the fraud unit at Hanover. And one of the things that we did throughout my entire career at Hanover before I retired was we assisted what's called, there was a group in the company that helped employers to maintain a safe workplace. Okay, so we would go out with those inspectors and go through business places and say, hey, you've got wires hanging here, you need to fix that. You've got, you have a leak here that's causing a water hazard situation. All right, so employers very simply should look around their business place and eliminate those leverage points that could allow somebody who's looking to commit fraud to make up or stage a claim. So things like in a supermarket, it's when there's a spill, that's when you hear, clean up in aisle 4. That's mainly done to protect people, but also to eliminate the potential for somebody to commit fraud by staging a slip and fall, for instance. Okay, so one of the things that employers can do is look to eliminate those potential hazards. Secondly, when we recommend to employers to look at a person's background before, when they're in the hiring process, and it's information that can be gleaned when they do a proper background search. Is this person a job jumper? Okay, do they work at a place for 6 months, leave, 6 months, leave? And when you look at their background, you may very well find that this person has had numerous claims in the past. And it's a question that you can ask. All right, have you ever been injured on the job? All right, now let me state this, Shelley, I'm not an attorney. So, these are questions that in my mind would help an employer protect their.
Yeah, you just brought to mind my first question there is, can you ask, have you ever filed for workers' compensation, or are you not allowed to ask that question in the hiring process?
I would defer to Sheldon. I would defer to an attorney on that. But if I was to ask that question in an interview, I would just ask them, have you ever been injured on the job?
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. That's a different question than have you ever filed a claim?
Okay.
So,
right. Okay. So what are the other red flags that employers can look out for? I mean, we
When-
had this whole big scandal on the LIRR, and there were red flags.
Sure. So let's go back and look at it from the front end of being proactive. Okay. If an employee that you hire comes to you and says, hey, yeah, I want to work some overtime, but can you pay me in cash? Okay, that's one thing that to look out for. Okay. The other thing is to listen to your employees. If somebody has been injured, talk to the people on the floor, talk to the people, their coworkers, and you'd be surprised how at times people will say, yeah, we were talking and this guy said he was going to get hurt on the job. And one of the things employers can do is listen to their workforce. Now, we talked about this before. There was a big scandal years ago with the Long Island Railroad where it seemed like every employee just prior to their retirement date was going out on workers' compensation disability. And then when the investigation got going, they found that not only was this a regular thing happening, right? It also involved the same medical providers, the same attorneys, and they, if you remember back, and I think, Shelley, this was probably 6, 7, 8 years ago, but they also found there was a point person, that there was a lot of communication to this one guy who was then directing these people to go to these different providers. So, the lure of easy money. And that's one of the things that we talk about at the Alliance is, the fact that it's not the right way to get yourself back in a good financial position. And what I'm saying is by committing insurance fraud.
Frank, you brought up something. I hope you guys don't mind.
Nope.
We had an incident with when I was hiring someone and they had a record, a history of going in and bringing up adult discrimination.
Okay.
For age discrimination. I call it adult, age discrimination. And you know what? I didn't think twice about doing a background check. I'll tell you that right now. You know what? I interview, I get it, the sense and everything like that. And our attorney sat there and said, you should have done a background check. If you Googled the person's name, that information does come up. And you know what, you don't, for the small businesses, when Frank and Shelley are talking about that doesn't cost money, for you to Google someone. You don't need, I'm looking at the people that are on this right now, the entrepreneurs. If you don't have an HR company, HR department, I should say, you can do that yourself. So I just wanted to throw that out. We had that situation, and right now, it's very easy to do a Google check, a background check on someone, because all the information will come up. And don't feel that you are invading their privacy, because all that information is on the website.
Helena, you bring up a great point. And it's one of the things and as Shelley knows, because we've talked in the past, I speak all over the country on insurance fraud. Okay. And one of the things that is a real value now is the ability to use the surface web just to do a very simple search. It takes, and to the people on this call, it takes mere seconds to run a person's name to find out who they are. Is there the address they're giving you a legitimate address? Okay, we've got one of the, when adjusters get new claims, it's one of those things, and adjusters are claim professionals. One of the things that we're recommending to them is just take those minutes and just Google the person's name very simply. And you may very well find that person that's sitting in front of you is not the person, is not that person. You may also find that their address is not legitimate, or like you said, you may find, and the surface web is Google and WhatsApp and sites like that. You may very well find that this person that you're looking to hire has sued 10 other companies for adult discrimination. And I think it's a great tool.
Frank, you were in a previous discussion with me, we were talking about some other red flags that employers should look out for, like the timing of
Yeah.
an injury.
Yeah, when you look at the red flag, the industry it calls indicators of potential fraud red flags. Okay, so I mean, so the bottom line is when I'm teaching a red flag course, I say to people, when you're driving down the highway and you see somebody in a yellow jumpsuit waving a red flag, what do? Slow down. So the concept is these are things that'll pop up in either a policy or a claim in hiring that we should look for. So from a claim perspective, one of the biggest red flags is as you just mentioned, Shelley, is the timing of the incident. When did their injury occur? Are they reporting to you on a Monday or a Tuesday that they were hurt on Friday afternoon before they left for the day? And then to say, well, I didn't think I was hurt that bad. But now I'm really hurt. And then now it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. That's a distinct red flag that possibly they got hurt over the weekend. The second thing is, when did this injury occur? Did it occur first thing on a Monday morning? That's one of the primary red flags of potentially fraudulent activity. Okay, or a fraudulent claim is a Monday morning accident, unwitnessed. In most cases, they're unwitnessed, or it may very well happen. And one of the other things the employers could look for is it may very well happen in a part of the business where this person wouldn't normally be. Okay, so if it's a Monday morning accident, if it's say an office worker who gets who works their way back to the production floor and falls behind a piece of machinery, that's something that needs to be investigated. And we will, the industry, the SIU industry, the insurance fraud investigation profession, these are things that we'll look for.
Do you, can I ask a question?
Yeah,
Do you
sure.
find that, because I've been on security, at security expos, do you find that having cameras being very effective to reduce the fraudulent, claims?
Absolutely, Helena. That's a great point. And I think that and I'll use the term progressive business owner, that owner who's looking to protect themselves. Cameras are a great tool to have around your business. I mean, there was a case. This is a New Jersey case going back about 3 years where an independent contractor didn't know there were cameras in the lunchroom of the business where he was working. All right. And you watch this guy walk in, he walks over to the ice machine, takes a cup of ice, backs up, looks around a little bit, then throws the ice on the floor, and then has his quote slip and fall. Well, trust me, if you saw this video, this guy was not going to win an Academy Award or an Emmy for his acting. He just sat down on the floor. The cameras that he didn't know were there are the reason that this person was brought to justice.
Do you have to let people know, though? Do you have to let your employees know if you're setting up cameras?
No.
You don't?
Nope.
Well, I would assume a lot of places have cameras just out in the open right now. Wherever you go, I mean,
Right.
especially in New York after 9/11, you would, there's cameras everywhere. In my building, we're on the Landmark building. There's cameras, just for a security sake, not for, the issues that we're talking about now. But I think as long as, if you're up front and you tell people when you're being hired, just want to let you know, for your security and for our security, we do have cameras, 24/7 or whatever.
And Helena, that's a very proactive way to do business. Let people know right up front. We have cameras that view 100% of our business place, with the exception of those areas that you would expect privacy.
Of course.
Locker room, Yeah, locker rooms, bathrooms, and places like that, nursing rooms, there's we had a case going, and this goes back, before I left Hanover. It was a New York labor law case where a contractor, an employee of a contractor, didn't know the camera was there, and there's no need to advise that the cameras are there. He was working, he was a drywall installer, and you watch him on camera. He walks in, sets up his ladder, looks around, knocks the ladder down, lays on the floor, and there was no audio. You can't have audio, okay, but you can have video. Obviously he could see him yelling, and he was making all kind of machinations, laying on the ground. Next thing you know, a person comes in, leans down, and within 2 or 3 minutes, the medical people arrive. Well, they showed him staging this accident for 2-3 minutes before he ever pushed the ladder down and sat on the floor. So to answer your question, Shelley, no, you don't have to let people know. But if you let them know, that's something that says, hey, maybe I shouldn't commit my fraud here.
Right. Well,
Okay.
even posting the signs that
Oh, yeah.
that we have cameras, that's a preventive right there. I mean, how many people have signs outside their houses that say they have an alarm system when they don't, but it's a way of preventing burglaries.
And I'm going to put my cop hat on. All right, is the best way to avoid getting your house robbed, for instance, is to put up a camera or put up a sign that says, that little sign in the ground out in front of your house, protected by XYZ security company. Have a dog. So what you're trying to do is make your home not, and this also goes to insurance fraud, Shelley, is to make your home not attractive to somebody who wants to rob you. But let's get back and let's get back to work comp fraud, so we don't bore Helena and the rest of her folks.
Okay, now we have had the discussion that sometimes the workers' comp fraud comes from the other side of the fence, which is the employer. So
Correct.
And I was thinking to myself, after we talked about this, I was wondering if business owners can possibly have this going on and they don't even know about it. And what should you look out for as a business owner to protect your business?
Okay, so for the honest business owner who hires contractors, for instance, you've got to make sure that in your hiring phase, that contractor has the requisite workers' comp coverage for all of their employees. Okay, and it's a, if a contractor comes into your home to do work, you can ask them for a certificate of insurance, and that certificate of insurance shows excuse me, that they have the requisite wrong pipe,
Sorry,
that they have
Frank.
that they have the requisite coverage. So let's flip that over to that unscrupulous employer, that employer who's looking to beat the system to get a lower rate for their insurance, for instance. And that's what we call rate evasion or premium evasion fraud, which is now, which isn't on the claimant side, but is on the front side. So, I think the bigger problem that we have in workers' comp insurance today is premium evasion versus actual claimant fraud or claim fraud. Okay, because there's a lot of businesses that will do different things to get a lower rate of insurance. For instance, they may have, say it's a construction company that has 100 workers. They may only cover or put 50 of those workers on their policy in order to obtain a lower rate for insurance. Okay, and then if it's one of those non-covered employees is injured, The next thing you know, they call their agent, put them on the policy, and then report the claim 1 or 2 days after the fact. All right,
Someone has a question. When you're talking to, for employers, what is the law? If they're a full-time, part-time employee, how many, or if you have 10 employees, what is the law for workers' compensation?
if you have an employee, they have to be covered by workers' compensation insurance, whether it's full-time or part-time.
How about independent
Now,
contractors?
independent contractors are different, and that would go back to their own, I believe, their own coverage. But again, Helena, as I said 10, 15 minutes ago, I'm not an attorney.
No,
I'm
no,
not,
no. Someone just asked that, popped up
Yep.
and asked me that question.
My-
Also, because you said that I can talk about the chat and everything. Miranda said, certs are meaningless. You can check online, also need endorsements, which was very an interesting point of view.
Well, and one of the things and she makes a great point. One of the things that we're actively investigating now for a number of our clients are fraudulent certificates of insurance. Okay, so it's literally a piece of paper that says you're covered. And you know, the state of New York, you know, the Insurance Frauds Bureau in the state of New York will take an active case when we find that somebody is submitting forged or fraudulent certificates of insurance. I mean, it's a viable document, and it's required. All right, and it should be required anytime you're looking to hire a contractor or go to bid for a contractor, that they have the requisite coverage. Now, the other thing that and I'll call them unscrupulous employers. These are the dishonest employers who are playing games with their premium. They'll not only underreport the number of employees, but they'll also misclassify the employees that they have working for them. And what that means is when they apply for insurance, they'll put XYZ employees under a job code that would be a lower rated job code for their industry. I mean, Helene, I can talk, and Shelley, I could talk war stories for the next 3 hours, but I don't think we have that much time. But we had a case back a number of years ago in New York City, in one of the boroughs, of a manufacturing company that when we looked at their policy, our premium auditor brought it to our attention. When I looked at the policy, they had, say, out of 110 workers, they listed 95 of them as, quote, clerical workers. Okay, when we went and did a site visit, there was only one office in the business, and that was the manager's office. So when we walked onto the production floor, there were 100 workers on the production floor. So what this person was doing was misclassifying those clerical workers, or claiming they were clerical workers, when in reality they were production floor employees, which has a much higher rate of insurance. All right, so and we were able to identify that fraud, and not only get premium that was owed to the company for the prior few years, but also, at the end of that policy period, we were able to cancel that policy, because no insurance company wants to do business with a company that's overtly committing fraud.
Frank, is there a best way to educate your employees about the consequences of workers' comp fraud so that you're preventing it from even starting?
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, there's a couple solutions, all right, that we look to do. We recommend, when I'm talking to employer groups, I tell them up front to make sure that they let their employees know in both written form and verbally that they have no tolerance for fraudulent activity. All right. Which are on the employee side, which would be staged accidents in a workers' comp case, malingering, which is having a legitimate injury, but then milking that injury to stay out of work longer because they like sitting on the couch versus working to get compensated for their time. We also, and it's one of the things that I've recommended for years, is when somebody is caught committing workers' compensation fraud, that they let the workforce know that that's why they're not there anymore, because they staged an accident, and that they were released from their job because they were caught violating company policy, which is submitting a fraudulent claim.
And what are the penalties for these employees?
The penalties vary by state, but in the state of New York has a very distinct Insurance Fraud Act, which lays out what the penalties are. And depending on the size of the fraud would depend on whether or not, what level of criminality it is staged at. But the bottom line is, if somebody commits fraud, they're subject to arrest and prosecution. Okay, in the state of New York, through these cases go from the insurance company to the Insurance Frauds Bureau, and the Insurance Frauds Bureau is then charged with bringing that person into the system by charging them with committing insurance fraud or attempting to commit insurance fraud.
How long of a jail time are you talking about, and how much of a fine? If
you look at the level of criminal act, I mean, there's certainly a distinct amount of you could be sentenced to, say, 6 months in jail, but the reality of it is, Shelley, that I don't remember the last time I saw a claimant get jail time, but they do get fined, and it's in those cases, it's up to the prosecutor as to what the fine is. I really can't enumerate exactly how much a fine could be, but the same goes for employers too, Shelley. If if those employers are caught, that manufacturer I spoke about a few minutes ago with the claimants, with the clerical workers who are actually production workers, they were fined by the state of New York through the workers' comp system for committing insurance fraud.
The New York Alliance Against Insurance Fraud has a website, fraudny.com. What can businesses learn at your website?
Well, if you go on our website, it's a very robust site that really lays out a lot of different forms of fraud. And if you look at this, our new campaign this year is all about workers' comp fraud. If you look at our new campaign, it'll lay out exactly what workers' comp fraud is, the types of fraud we see. And there's a ton of information on our website about all different types of insurance fraud. And so I recommend that everybody on this call go to our site and just take a look at the different types of fraud that we talk about. And you can also go and look at our prior campaigns. All right, this year is work comp. Last year was cyber fraud, which is important to businesses as well.
Frank and Shelley, I have, if someone can put, or Jennifer, if you can put in the chat, the websites, or at the end, we can type it in. But also someone asked, are there any forms that can be used for new employees or subcontractors to use and have them sign related to asking questions to worker comp in the past?
That's a good question. Again, Helena, I'm an SIU guy. I'm not an HR person or a lawyer. There may very well be, but I'm not 100% sure.
But Frank,
I can find that out and look that up for you,
Yep.
or get someone in contact.
But like Frank mentioned earlier, in the interview process, you can ask your potential hire if they've ever been injured on the job.
Yep. The other thing that, going back to
that's the answer,
Yep.
basically.
Shelley, going back to that, when when you're interviewing a new person and you look on their application, for instance, and you see that they've changed jobs a lot, ask them why.
Yeah, but Frank, in today's environment, This is what people are doing because they jump jobs to get a higher paycheck. I mean, it's become like the norm,
Yeah,
right?
Shelley, you're absolutely right. And I think that um, to me, it's worth asking the question. And that may very well be the answer, that I moved here because they gave me more money. I moved there because I could work from home, whatever. But you may very well get that one person to say, well, I got injured and they didn't really treat me right. And, you know, I was unhappy with them, so I quit. All right. So, and again, I would look closely at that. It doesn't look, all those red flags we talked about, and there's hundreds of them. They're not proof of fraud. And I think that's one thing I want to make sure everybody understands, that those red flags that we look at from an industry perspective are only reasons to look a little further, reasons to maybe call our hotline at the Alliance, which I'll give that number. And Jennifer, if you could put this up, it's 844 Fraud NY, 844 FRAUD is our 800, our hotline number. And so that's available, Shelley, to anybody who may think that somebody's committing fraud. Give us a call and we'll direct that information to the proper authority who can look into that. So it's one of the things that we do at the Alliance, is provide people an opportunity, if they see something happening, to let us know, and we'll make sure that the right entity gets that information.
You know, it's just so hard to find employees, period, today. Yep. I mean, yeah. But
yeah,
I think, you know, sometimes like you as a former cop, you have a gut feeling.
Sure.
You know, you follow your gut. If you have a gut feeling, you got to follow it.
And if you get that gut feel, that's one of the best in all of my public discussions. That's the one thing that I talk about, regardless of the group that I'm talking to. If you have a gut feeling, trust it. And what that gut feeling should do is make you ask more questions. Look further into that claim, into that person's background. Look further into, you know, things, you know, why have you moved around a lot? Well, there may be a very logical reason. And you know what? The good thing about red flags is, as I said, they're not evidence of fraud, and they're usually easily resolved. Well, why did you only stay there for 6 months? Well, I got an offer for a better, much higher paying job. Well, asked and answered. Okay. And you've resolved your gut.
Let's go back to the malingerer. How do you know? How do you know, and how do you stop it?
Well, one of the things that we'll look for are certainly, and here's some of the red flags again. You know, if somebody is, their home on disability, okay, TTD, temporary total disability, they should be home recuperating or rehabilitating. Okay, if the claim professional or the employer calls them during the day, unless they're at the doctor's or running a quick errand, they should be home.
But so you don't know that they're on their cell.
Very good point. Okay.
Instagram, Facebook, all those pictures that they're taking on Friday, you know, at night and posting. There you go.
Right.
And Helena, I was just going to go there, is, you know, don't be afraid, again, to go back to those surface websites and see what a person's up to. You know, insurance companies utilize various investigative techniques. And one of the techniques that, you know, and this isn't an advertisement, but our company does we do a lot of surveillance for our clients. If an insurance company or an employer thinks that this person is malingering and they're not injured and they're just collecting money, tell your insurance company that, hey, we think this may be going on. And then that insurance company may very well hire you know, a third party company to do surveillance, to find out what this person's doing. And you'd be surprised what comes up under surveillance. You get people who are supposed to be totally disabled, washing their car, climbing their roof, up on top of the roof, blowing their gutters out and things, things like that. So there are ways to identify the malingerer. Also, we recommend that they make contact with the medical provider. Okay, and just ask them, should this person be out this long for this type of injury?
Are you allowed to do that under HIPAA?
Absolutely, because we're paying that provider. We're providing, the medical bills are coming to the insurance company, and you can't. Again, Shelley, in my opinion, you absolutely can ask the person if it's not private information. They're asking the doctor if this person is really injured, and the doctor's going to say yes or no. Again, I'm an investigative guy. I'm not an attorney or a claim professional. So,
are we getting any other questions here, or are there other issues, Frank, that we have not brought up that you think would be beneficial to the chamber members?
I think one of the things that people need to understand is the impact of insurance fraud on businesses. Okay, obviously, the cost of fraud is borne by the people who pay for insurance. So for those people on this call, it's the business owners. Their policy, the cost of insurance is higher because of those companies and those people who commit fraud. I think the analogy would be, one of the things we're seeing in a lot of urban areas, a lot of cities now is retail theft. Well, retail theft drives the cost of goods and services up. Well, insurance fraud is exactly the same. And it results in higher premiums, higher prices on goods and services. It may very well cause a business owner to go out of business because they can't afford those coverages anymore. And it also, it's unfair to that law-abiding business owner to have to compete against those companies that are cheaters. All right. Think about it. If you've got two companies that are vying for a contract, for instance, and one company does everything by the book, declares, is 100% honest, and they're competing against another similar company that's done premium evasion fraud. Well, that other company, that unscrupulous company, can bid at a lower price. So that's where it really does hurt the honest business owner, and certainly adds to emotional stress as a business owner. That how can they do business against companies that may be cheating the system? And
so, if you again see something, you say something. Where do you report this if you think this is going on?
And we put up those, and I'll repeat them. It's, our website is fraudny.com, and our toll-free number is 844 fraud NY, 844 FRAUD-NY. Let us know. And there are you certainly can let the New York Insurance Department know. The Insurance Frauds Bureau has an 800 number, which I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But, as an employer, just if you suspect a bogus claim, let your insurance company know about it. One of the things that employers can look for is that time frame thing, Shelley, that you and I spoke about a little while back. If there's a delay between the injury and the reporting of that injury, let your insurance company know about that.
Frank?
Yes.
Frank and Shelley, there's a good question here. What about if the business is sold and the new are the new owners liable for the open case?
No, because the policies are what's called claims made, so that the policy that was in effect at the time of the injury that company is going to be the one that's handling that claim. Now, the new business owner is going to have to obtain new insurance from the day they start business. Okay. And it may very well be with the same company, but a new business owner has to create their own coverage. So you can't insurance coverage just doesn't roll over because a business changes hands. You have to get a new company or a new policy for that business.
And Frank, when you talk about a lag, what would be considered a lag? Because you go to the doctor. Every time I go to the doctor, if you have a problem, there's always a place you're supposed to check off, was this an on-the-job injury or not?
Right. In my mind, as an insurance fraud professional, insurance fraud fighting professional, any delay in reporting an injury is what I call a red flag. Now, there may very well be a reason that there's a lag in time. You know, if a person is injured on a Monday and they don't report it to their employer until, you know, a Wednesday, Thursday, even the next day, to me, that's something worth looking into. It doesn't mean it's fraud, but there's a reason to look a little further. It's like automobile accidents. You can be involved in an accident, and the injury that you sustain may not may not appear until hours later. Okay. Again, it's a lag in time. It's a red flag, but once you look into and investigate that red flag, it could be easily resolved. So, you know, a person could very well get hurt on Friday afternoon and not realize it until Saturday or Sunday, and then report it on Monday morning. That's reasonable and could be legit, but it's also reasonable for the insurance company or the employer to ask questions. Why was there that delay? Okay, you know, and that's not only in work comp insurance, that's in every line of insurance. Why would somebody have a major car accident and wait a week to report it to their carrier? It doesn't make any sense. So that's one of those time lag, you know, the time frame delays are something that we look very closely at.
Anything else we haven't covered that you want?
I think the last thing I want to go back and just make sure that everybody on this call, or everybody who may listen to this in the future, understands the impact of fraud on specifically people in the state of New York. All right. Insurance, the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud in Washington, D.C. did an extensive study in 2022 about the cost of insurance fraud. And they found that, you know, it's nationally a $308.6 billion problem. So when you pare that down and compare that to what the impact is on New Yorkers, which is what we're talking about today, that, you know, it costs every New Yorker, not just people buying insurance, but every New Yorker, that's every baby, teenager, mom, dad, grandparent. Insurance fraud costs every person $930 per year. All right, that's a lot of money. You know, think about if you have a family with, you know, 2-3 kids. That's a lot of money that is, unfortunately, should not have to be borne by the, you know, the people in the state of New York. Workers' comp specifically costs everybody $102 per person. Again, not people buying insurance, but everybody in the state of New York. So I think people have to understand, and if you look at the tagline of the New York Alliance Against insurance fraud is the crime you pay for. And people need to understand that if they don't do it, number one, for a number of reasons, obviously because it's illegal, it's the wrong thing to do. And if they see it occurring, let somebody know. They can call the Insurance Frauds Bureau. They can call the New York Alliance Against Insurance Fraud. They can go to our website and easily report it. You can report it anonymously. If you don't want to leave your name, that's fine. Just give information, give the information on what you believe is occurring, and we'll make sure that somebody looks into that.
How prevalent is workers' comp fraud?
Well, this is Frank Stuck talking. This isn't the Alliance, and this isn't the Delta Group. I believe it's very prevalent. I think it's one of the most prevalent insurance crimes that we see today, because it's very easily perpetrated, and specifically on that premium evasion side that we talked about before.
Someone just asked, does that go for sole proprietors?
Ask what, Helena?
Does that go for sole proprietors? Do you, I think, can you, Joanna Kola, can you be more specific on that? In what, in reference to what was he, Frank and Shelley talking about?
I mean, as she's typing, if she's talking about, is it incumbent upon sole proprietors to also be careful? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That would make.
Yep. So, you know, even a sole proprietor could very well be a business that may hire contractors or may hire independent people to work for them or with them. And I think even the sole proprietor needs to make sure that that person that they're partnering with or they're hiring has the commensurate proper insurance coverage.
You know, is this more common, Frank, among contracted workers as opposed to people who are on your payroll?
I think a lot of the premium fraud cases that we've seen do involve contracting companies. In my former life at Hanover Insurance Company, I chaired the Massachusetts Insurance Fraud Bureau Governing Board, and a number of cases that we saw in that state specifically did involve those companies that were temp worker organizations, were contracting companies, where a premium evasion seemed to be very, very common.
But that's the on the employer side.
On
what
the
about
employer
on
side.
the employee side? Are, you know, a contracted employee, are is it more common? Is
Shelley,
workers' comp fraud more common
I think
there
that's
than on your payroll employees?
That's a good question, and I think that's something that, I mean, I'd have to really research that to see. I would go back to the coalition in Washington and ask them that question. I think that the contracted employee, the independent contractor, remember, is covering themselves. Okay, so they may very well, like in that New Jersey case I talked about, he was an independent contractor, but he was staging that fake slip and fall to make a general liability claim against the employer. Okay, so from a work comp standpoint, I think that it's more you know, actual employees of the companies that are insured through the various insurance companies. So,
does anyone have any last minute questions before we close it out? Just put it in the chat. And in the meanwhile, Frank or Shelley, do you want closing remarks or anything that you want to say before we close this?
I'll let Shelley go first.
I just want to thank you for having us and opening up this discussion.
Very important.
Very important. And again, go to fraudny.com for if you have any other questions or you need some more information. And Frank?
Yeah, I think that, you know, I'm gonna call on Matthew Smith, who's the chair of, is the executive director of the coalition. And, you know, one of the things that he talks about, and Matthew and I do a lot of these presentations together, is don't fall for the lure of easy money. Okay, insurance fraud is not the right way to get yourself back financially secure. If you're a professional, know that you will most likely be caught if you're committing fraud. And if you're experiencing financial stress and considering fraud as a way out, don't do it, because insurance fraud is a crime. And even though you're in dire circumstances, it's not the right way to get yourself whole. So, you know, the bottom line is, and this is my final comment, is the vast majority of people that we do business with, and I'm saying we, the insurance industry, are the vast majority are honest. But those unscrupulous people, those people who are taking advantage of the system, are really, really impacting all the honest people. So that's the bottom line, is know that it's the crime that you pay for.
And to all this, the businesses on here, if you have any questions or you need the resources or the tools to support all the good ideas and the preventativeness of fraudulent claims on your company, reach out to Frank, reach out to Shelley, reach out to myself. I could refer you over back to Frank. If you have any questions, let us know. This is being, this will be on Chamber TV. It is being recorded if you do have any questions and you want to go back. But Shelley and Frank, thank you so much. This was so informative. I think all information for small businesses, especially if they don't have an HR department or they don't have the, a private contractor to do this information, to provide it, is so important, and it keeps the economy going, and it keeps the claims down, which means your claims as a business owner will stay down. So thank you again, everyone, so much, and enjoy your weekend and enjoy the day. And again, if you have any questions, please go to chamber.nyc.
Thank you, Helena.
Thank you, Helena. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer, for working with us. We'll be having a follow-up on this because I found this very, very fascinating, very informative, and it's very good to get in the hands of businesses. So thank you again.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.